Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to our webinar on Industry 4.0 and investing in Launchpad.build. I'd like to introduce today Jon Medved, our founder and CEO, and Bill Gross, one of the co-founders of Launchpad. Bill Gross is a legend in the VC community. He has one of the most prolific and successful track records as an early stage investor. Bill's a lifelong entrepreneur who started his first solar business in high school, and after graduating from the California Institute of Technology, he started GNP Development, which was sold to Lotus Development Corporation in 1985. Went on from there in 1991 to start Knowledge Adventure, which was acquired by Vivendi, and then afterwards founded Idealab in 1996. And Idealab pioneered the whole model of a startup studio. They've had an incredible track record, starting over 150 companies with more than 45 IPOs and acquisitions. And some of the better known companies you may know coming out of Idealabs are Cars Direct, which was acquired by Internet Brands, Tickets.com, Picasa, which became Google Photos, Evolution Robotics, acquired by iRobot, Shopping.com, NetZero, GoTo.com, acquired by Overture. Bill, as I said, is a co-founder of Launchpad.build, and we are delighted to welcome him here today. He and Jon Medved are going to discuss Industry 4.0, what led him to invest in Launchpad and start it, and also share with us some of his tips from his incredible 25-year career at Idealab.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Bill. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Thank you so much. Thanks for that kind introduction.
So full disclosure here, Bill and I go back a long way. In fact, my younger brother, Harry Medved, I think was number 5 employee at Idealab. So I know Bill Gross from the very beginning. And this is, full circle. We are delighted that at this juncture, OurCrowd is getting the opportunity to lead an investment in Launchpad. This is an exciting company focused on the what people are calling Industry 4.0. And really, I want to start the conversation because a lot of people, I think, don't really get it. Okay, everybody is sort of under the impression that the famous statement of Mark Andreessen, another friend, that software eats the world means that anything other than that, doesn't count. Why is manufacturing all of a sudden becoming sexy in our time?
Yeah, I think Mark was right. Software is eating the world. And I think why this is so big of a time for manufacturing is almost every exciting hardware product has software now, meaning hardware products that are just static are dead, but hardware products that get smarter over time because their software learns and gets better or can be updated, that's the entire future of hardware. So I think that has given a huge boost to both the revenue potential of hardware, the margin potential, but the possible impact it can have on the world, because it's no longer a product that you buy. Think of the old products we used to buy where we plugged them in. They never needed to boot up. You plugged them in, but they also never changed. They never got better. They never got new features. Think of even the Tesla as the ultimate hardware product that gets smarter over time, where you can get over-the-air updates. I think every hardware product to succeed is going to be like that in the future.
And the problem with hardware, of course, is you've got to make it.
Yes,
right?
yes.
And I think when people think of manufacturing 4.0, they're thinking of a Tesla factory, right? They're thinking about, futuristic, incredible manufacturing lines, unbelievable amounts of money being invested to build these, and that things will be produced in large quantities. Is that the only future we have in manufacturing 4.0?
Well, I feel that what we're doing at Launchpad is solving this fundamental problem. You can either be a craftsman and make each item by hand, slowly and carefully, like we did for centuries, or you can build a big mass production factory that makes the same thing over and over again, but has huge upfront and setup costs. You have to spend billions of dollars on robotic lines, but then you have inflexibility. You need to make the same thing over and over again at very, very large volume. There's a huge gap in between, and that's what Launchpad is filling. And why is there that huge gap? Currently, robotics, the robots are not that expensive, but the programming of them is way too expensive. If you want to make a production run somewhere in the hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands, but not millions, and millions means a huge upfront investment, you can't afford to program the robots to make that product. But that's what Launchpad is revolutionizing. It's using AI and processing power to figure out how to make the product. And therefore, now small runs can be made with the efficiency of a large production run. And that's a game changer. That really is a game changer for hardware in general.
So how big is the opportunity?
It's unbelievable. So listen to some of these numbers. So globally, manufacturing is about $8.5 trillion a year. The US alone is $2 trillion a year. If you take out...
By the way, pause for a second.
Yeah.
You said trillion.
Yeah, trillion dollars, right?
In the US alone, it's $2 trillion.
$2 trillion.
Annually. Yeah,
annually.
Okay,
and if you just take that down to contract manufacturing, people who outsource their manufacturing to others, it's still $500 billion. It's over 500 billion. And we believe that fully 10% of that in the United States alone is our immediate TAM, immediate total addressable market. So $50 billion of possible potential from people. And this will expand the market because this now gives people the chance to make products at modest volume cost effectively. So I think it's a game changer. And of course,
where does this kick in, Bill? I mean, do I have to make 1,000 units or can I make 50 units?
Even tens or hundreds, because in the past, to make tens, you had to make them by hand. And now you can finally use automation because you don't need to know how to program the robots to do that automation. The incredible thing is,
if I wanted to make 50, let's say a newfangled piece of something. I mean,
yes.
We've all love our gadgets.
Yes.
Typical times in the old regime, it would take me 6 months plus minus.
6 months, maybe even up to a year. So the traditional way would be, and I've done this many times, and this is one of the reasons why I'm so excited about the company, is many of our companies in the past had to make products and had to go through that 8-month painful process. So it's doing all the drawings. It's flying over to China to go interview manufacturers.
Assuming you can get in.
Yeah, right. It's choosing a manufacturer. It's then having them plan how they're going to make it. Then they send you prototypes back. Then they're wrong. Then you send them back and you make the corrections. Then you fly back over there. And then by the time they're making the first 100 for you to test, you've lost almost a year. And that year is crucial because time to market is everything. In fact,
so
even more than
with Launchpad, how does this change?
We turn that.
How is it shrunk? What's the time frame?
We turn months into weeks. We can turn 8 months into several weeks. And here's how we do it. You give us the CAD files. We use AI on the CAD files to figure out what the assembly technique should be. And not only do we figure it out, it gets better every product we make because we're learning from more and more products. So again, we're using the horsepower of multiple products all together, and basically Moore's law. Moore's law is a big factor in this. If you didn't have enough computation power, basically we're replacing all those trips to the manufacturer with computation, which has gone down close to free. The travel is expensive, but the computation is free. So now we can have a robot making that product in a week and getting you prototypes back. And here's why that's even more important. It's not just that we shaved all that time. It's that now you can make more iterations. And iterations are crucial to getting product market fit. Product market fit is everything in the world today. You need to have a product that people want. Well, if it takes 8 months for you to take test 1 and 8 months to see test 2, instead if you can do those 2 turns in a month, you have a game-changing ability to compete with bigger companies. So I've always felt that entrepreneurship is incredible because small groups can compete with big Goliaths. But one of the best things that a small company has is ability to move more quickly. Doesn't have all the heritage of the big company, all the slowness of a big company. But in manufacturing, small wasn't necessarily better. And now these tools give the small company a big advantage. So there'll be a lot more innovation.
You're going to do this essentially soup to nuts, right? In other words, the guy who's developing the next gadget or the next iteration of his own product, instead of schlepping out to China and going through the 8-month torture, he's now going to ship you this, essentially, contract you Now, you guys are also going to acquire his parts more intelligently. I
Yes.
understand that's part of this process too.
Yeah, here's a really exciting thing too. Procurement is challenging. And there are often things that you can adjust that you might not know that will either save a lot of money or shorten a lot of time. Sometimes there could be, I'm just making up this example. You design your product with a 4.3-inch screen and this and this and this. It might turn out that the 4.5-inch screen is in stock and cheaper, and all you have to do is change the CAD file like this and adjust it, and all of a sudden that will work better. So connecting AI to source and supply can also make dynamic adjustments that a human just can't know all those things. So it really, really is powerful.
And then you will use robotics, the same kind of robotics that the big boys use in their big factories, to build me my 50 first units. And in a couple of weeks, I'm already testing this with customers and then iterating. It's got to be crazy expensive, right? I mean, how much is it going to cost?
No, it costs less. It costs less to do it this way because we didn't have to either set up a human line of people to do it and train them how to make that product, and we didn't have to set up a programmed robotic line. Here's the angle. We have generalized robotics that can do many different tasks that just get adjusted by code. So it goes back to what you said earlier, software eating the world. Software is not only eating the world in the hardware product itself. Software is eating the world in our line. Like our line is now driven by software, not by humans who wrote the individual lines of code. And it really, really is incredible what AI can do because it can learn from every single product it's ever seen. Every single CAD file that we give to it teaches it something new about how to apply the glue or how to put the screws in or what order the plate should go on. Like all those things are what is extracted essentially out of the minds of all the people who work on the lines over the years, but these just get extracted automatically from CAD files.
So this sounds absolutely brilliant and necessary. I mean, it's solving so many different problems. I mean, we haven't even really spoken yet about the problems with the supply chain, right? We've just, we're coming out both in America and Israel and other parts of the world out of this horrible pandemic. Supply chains were broken, right? You couldn't fly to China. You couldn't get the stuff. Semiconductors are a year back ordered in some cases. I mean, what does this have in terms of an impact on what they call nearshoring or onshoring of the supply chain?
Well, it should be transformative. Think about how much more you can do locally if you don't have to rely on, say, the Suez Canal, or you don't have to rely on
especially when it's blockaded.
Right, exactly. That's what I mean. Or going across the ocean. A lot of times, you're just waiting a month for something to come across the ocean. That could have been 2 more turns on your product. But what it really does, as you said, it opens up nearshoring, which is exciting. It opens up local job opportunities for people. But most importantly, I feel is this. Just like the software revolution allowed people, a smart person anywhere on earth, and in fact, it accounted for a huge amount of all the entrepreneurship in Israel and India and everywhere. A smart brain anywhere on earth could make a product for everyone if it was a software product. Now, this will enable a smart brain anywhere on earth to make a hardware product locally as well. So I feel this opens up new innovation that people were locked out of previously. So I really feel this is a leveling of the playing field for anyone with a creative idea somewhere that can be impactful to the world now has a chance to make it. Now, I envision these manufacturing centers to be distributed all over. Think about how much better it is to use local materials, local manufacturing, and then the short delivery time. It's also good for the environment too, to not be carrying this stuff across the ocean. Obviously, there's a lot of pollution when you go carry stuff. You have to carry that mass from where it was made to where the people are, as opposed to just making it where the people are.
So one of the, I think, cool things about this, when I was talking to you before about how this transpired, I mean, you're a legendary entrepreneur. You create things yourselves. I love them. I mean, if I had to name my company something other than OurCrowd, I would have chosen Idealab, but it was already taken. So, I mean, but the reality is you're both investor, mentor, and yet in this case, you're a co-founder. Now, I asked, how did that happen? And you told me the story about how you met Yoav, the other co-founder. And I'd love it if you could just, share that story, because I think it's such a classic, gross kind of story. I love it.
Yeah. Well, as I said, we've been making many hardware companies across the years. And as you said, they're hard. Hardware companies are harder to make than software companies. And all of our companies had to go do the whole rigmarole of going to manufacturing, usually offshore, shopping it, waiting all that time. And one thing that I learned that was very frustrating was the people who are making the product know the rules for how to make the product better. The engineers who are drawing the product might not know those rules. So you have a whole interface issue where the engineer is drawing the product, say in SolidWorks or something, and then going over, and then it has to be adjusted again to actually make it manufacturable. It has to be a whole give and take. Well, at that time, this is back in around 2005, 2006, when I was making a hardware product, I thought, wouldn't it be incredible if inside of SolidWorks, there could be real-time quoting or real-time feedback or some real-time signal as to manufacturers about how they could make this product, because that would make the engineers smarter when they were actually designing it. So I made a concept sketch of this. I called it dynamic production. I thought it would be a new way of making things more dynamically than the way they were made now. I made that sketch. I started thinking about it. I loved that concept, and I thought about it for years and years and years. Okay, now fast forward almost 15 years later. Incredible entrepreneur, Yoav, builds a huge company in London, Kiwi Power, sells it and moves to Los Angeles and looks me up, reaches out to me on LinkedIn and says, I would love to talk to you. I've always admired Idealab. I would love to meet with you. And I met with him downtown at a great Italian restaurant for lunch downtown in Los Angeles. And I started pitching him on all my green technology ideas, because he had just done something in the clean energy space. And I'm pitching him and pitching him and pitching him. And he's listening. I'm so excited. The more I get to know him, the more I think he'd be an incredible CEO for one of our companies. And then he says, well, I want to pitch one idea to you too. I have this idea for manufacturing is broken. I really think that you need a faster way to manufacture products. If you could, and he describes the idea to me, and I'm like, oh, Yoav, I can't even believe it. Okay, I pull up my briefcase and I open up my laptop. I said, okay, I have to show you this picture because you won't believe me if I just said I've had that idea before. But I actually have the drawing from 15 years ago of the exact dream like that. And I said, yo, we've got to do this together. This is incredible.
I love that. I love that.
Like the idea that Yoav reached out to me of the entire universe and found someone who was exactly thinking of that. It was meant to happen.
It was meant to be. Bashert,
meant to be. Yes. Yes.
So look, I'm getting a lot of questions, and I'm going to go do a little bit different than we often do, which is to sort of integrate some of these questions into our dialogue, because I've seen 3 now in a row that want to know about the competitive landscape for Launchpad. In particular, someone asked about how does it compete with Proto Labs. Somebody asked how does it compete with Autodesk's Fusion 360. Okay, and without going into the specifics necessarily of a spec comparison or feature development, can you give a sense of where Launchpad sits in the overall competitive landscape?
Yes, our product would work with Proto Labs in that Proto Labs is incredible company that makes the parts. We want to be the company that assembles the parts into the product. So Proto Labs will do a quick turnaround on machining a metal plate or making an injection molded piece, but you'll get back all the parts. We want to be the company that can assemble the entire product, that will even put a circuit board in, put a screen in, put the screws in, put the case together. And that's our novelty, which is the robotic system to figure out how the product goes together, not just make the individual parts.
And so theoretically, Proto Labs becomes a supplier to...
It would be incredible, right? Proto Labs and all the other parts suppliers would be fed into making the complete product. So we think we align very well with Proto Labs, but we're not really a competitor.
And then with Autodesk and what they're doing, I mean, that's just, they stop on the design side, right?
Yeah, no, again, we would work beautifully with Autodesk. We want people to use those tools to make their product design and to get the parts they need, but we want to be the assembler. And I don't know if showing a video will work. Let me take a stab at showing a short video of what the assembly looks like, and then people would understand how it's distinct. Can we give that a try, John?
If my technical people say okay, we're going to do it.
Yep. Let me see if this will work. If it doesn't work, we'll come right back. But let me try this.
Okay. Nothing's lost by trying.
Okay. Are you seeing my screen right now?
Yeah, we're seeing it right now.
Okay, so this is a video of a simulation of us taking the CAD files and figuring out exactly how this project is going to be put together. We're going to have to go over and lift apart. We're going to have to go put it in this place. And this is a simulation again of going and applying the glue, picking up the part, moving over, figuring out that's going to go get placed down here, put that on. And this is all done in simulation from the files. But then we go from simulation to actual. So this is the actual machine now actually doing it after the simulation has proven that that works. So we can take drawings from an engineer, figure out how the product is going to be put together, simulate it to prove it first, then we go build it. And that's just never been done before. And that opens up this whole frontier to enable people to be manufacturers who couldn't have been otherwise, and to do it quickly.
That's really, by the way, one of the questions was asked about using AI to, analyze the various drawing sets and whatnot to make it faster. How do you sort of, protect privacy and protect IP when it's all being sort of assembled in Launchpad's, robotic head? How do you sort of give them sort of HIPAA kind of compliant privacy?
I would have to defer to our awesome CTO, Ofer, but he has built this system so that each customer's full system is contained in their own files and separate from everybody else. But I would again have to defer to Ofer to describe exactly how we protect that. But every customer has their own IP shielded off.
And speaking of Ofer and the team, I mean, essentially, my understanding is you've got these two really super bright Israelis, one who sold this company, if I can say this, for several $100 million out of London, then moved to LA. Another who actually spent many years as a senior guy at one of the leading, perhaps the most important contract manufacturing company, Flextronics, and that's Ofer. So, and they're working together with a team in Israel and additional team in Pasadena, correct? You're having a two-headed company here.
Yes. Well, Ofer is unbelievable in that he has both the AI expertise, but also the actual contract manufacturing expertise. So he's seen the low margin, large scale contract manufacturing system that is slow and lumbering, but can make 1 million products. And he wanted to disrupt that by coming up with a way to make lower volume, but faster turns, but still have all the cost advantage of automation. And he's just incredible. And he's built this system. And again, it's a wonderful U.S.-Israeli collaboration to make this company happen.
Now, my understanding, Bill, is that they already got several customers who they're supporting, who are starting to use this not just on, proof of concept, but are actually sort of getting real started.
Yes.
How long is it going to take for this to become commonplace? I mean, right now, thank God, this is like a little bit of a secret between us folks here. And now we're opening it up to our community. How long does this take to really catch on? Is this going to be
I think it's going to blow up. We have 3 revenue generating customers now: Solgen, Athelos, and Waves. We've got about 10 customer engagements. With this announcement, even today here, more people are going to hear about us. We'll probably have a lot of inbound customer requests. We're excited to scale this as fast as possible. The great thing about this is this really does scale because it doesn't require people. I mean, obviously the people have to write the software, we have to build the systems, but it's not like we're hiring lots of people to go on an assembly line. That's the beautiful thing about this is the automation really allows other people's imagination to operate at scale.
It's unbelievable. There's a question about, are you working with any of USC's Levine and Young Academy folk?
I think so, but that I wouldn't know. I'd have to defer that to Yoav and Ofer.
Scott, we'll get back to you on that. We're also getting a question here from Latin America. Hello, Latin America. Hola and buenos tardes over there. The question that is being asked is to what extent there should be sort of clusters of these technologies,
Yes, yes,
right? Where you have Proto Labs and
yes,
Launchpad, and we have another great additive manufacturing company over in Simi Valley, just down the road from you,
yep.
called Nexa 3D that Avi Reichenthal is running. You know, Desktop Metal. We have you know, how do you look at that in terms of creating the next sort of manufacturing capability?
Oh, that's my dream. No, my dream would be that there be a cluster of all the companies necessary, including some of the supply all around. Well, that's sort of what happened in Shenzhen with the cluster of manufacturing that Foxconn and others do, but it's all manual. Imagine now a cluster of advanced manufacturing with all the things nearby, but one of these in every major city in the world or spread around the world. So we have what Latin America covered, we have Middle East, you know, all over. And imagine that even customers can customize their product as well, so that company invents a new concept, but it's fully customizable because the robots can go make a different one. This is really the dream of mass customization, where you can order something and get it the next day, but it's fully customized because there's a local warehouse where it was made, put together, dropped off, delivered the next day. So it's almost like Amazon next day delivery, but the product that you want exactly the way you want it. I think that is the future, and we're enabling it. I think that's going to be an incredible opportunity.
So I'm going to take this to a little bit higher level in terms of entrepreneurship and the rules for success in investing early, because you've got a lot of experience. I understand you just celebrated your 25th anniversary at Idealab, and you shared 25 lessons from those years. I'm not sure you're going to have time to do that now. I would like to get you back for another separate webinar if I can get that commitment to share those.
I would love that. I'd love to share a few of them with you right now, though, that are relevant for this.
If you could, please do.
Yep. Let me share the screen with you again.
Just a little bit of a sneak preview, which you guys love out there in LA.
Great. So, well, 25 years ago, we started Idealab, and it was basically a business to create businesses. I tried to model it off of Edison Labs, where you could prototype things and spin them off into separate companies. And we were very early doing this. This was not a accepted idea back then, but it's been imitated a lot. And I'm so thrilled that people have copied this idea, because I think it's a great way to help entrepreneurship happen. What we try to do is look for big opportunities that are big and broken and brainstorm technology solutions to fix them. And that's exactly what Launchpad is. It's a huge opportunity. And I think the current way you manufacture things is not optimal. And we've really tried to improve the structure of entrepreneurship to unlock human potential. And we started off with just these first 12 ideas back in 1996. But since then, we've done more than 150 companies. Well, we had 5,000 ideas. So we trimmed down the ideas to figure out which ones to start a company with. We started 150. We've now had 50 successful IPOs and acquisitions. And when I look back at the most valuable lessons I learned over all those years, like the things I wish someone had told me before I started Idealab, these are my top 25. Now, I'm not going to go through 25, but this is shared at the Idealab website. And John, I'll come back and talk to you more about them. But let me just call out a few that are so relevant for Launchpad. So the very first one, challenge the status quo. This one is definitely challenging. This idea is definitely challenging the way people currently make things. So I think that is the foundation of a great idea, is to really go against the grain with something bold. The second one, I gave a whole TED talk about this. Find great timing. The timing for this idea is perfect in the world right now. As you said, with this focus more on nearshoring, with this focus more on time to market, I definitely feel that the time is right for this idea. On finding product market fit, the world wants this badly, but also the customers who are using this product need to use this to find product market fit better. And then iterate like crazy. I think iterating like crazy is the foundation of success for a startup. And our company, Launchpad, enables a startup to iterate better than they could otherwise.
This, by the way, this is great stuff, Bill. We'll definitely do that webinar. My events team will be in touch to schedule it.
Great.
And stay tuned, everybody, to come back and join us for this these 25 lessons. You can get this material on the Idealab website. I'm going to invite David to rejoin us to make this a tripartite discussion. I want to again urge everybody to send your questions in. We're getting a good flow and appreciate that. Just keeps it even more exciting. We're getting David. One of the questions you want to raise at this point, or Can I continue?
Sure, I'm happy to. So one of the questions coming in is just maybe a little bit more information on the business model for Launchpad. Is it a SaaS model or service model? How does it work exactly?
It's a service model, but the company is very flexible. To understand the pricing, again, I would really urge someone to speak directly with Yoav, but it's basically to enable someone to make the product cheaper and faster at modest volumes. And again, on an individual basis, someone should speak to Yoav more directly for the pricing.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just add as an investor in the company, one of the things I looked at closely was to understand the business model and the margin structure, because I think that's always a concern with hardware. And we both looked at the margin that Proto Labs was earning as somewhat of a comp, and also talked extensively with the team about the margin that Yoav hoped to achieve. And there again, a key idea is being both competitive with contract manufacturing in China and other low wage countries, and doing so at acceptable margin.
We're getting a question. I've got a great question here. I'm afraid it might be tongue in cheek, but I'm afraid it might not be. And so it's a question that says, Bill, tell me how much money do you want me to hand over to you to fulfill your dream? Now, it's not clear about that question. Are these the dreams about manufacturing or all of Bill's dreams? Because I think all of Bill's dreams, that's an awful big amount. But this one, not so much.
Well, I appreciate that sentiment. That was very, very nice. We just need partners to help us scale these ideas. My real dreams are just to make the world a better place on every dimension. I think this company will make the world a better place. I think the things I'm working on in climate change are to make the world a better place. I think entrepreneurship in general makes the world a better place. So I really appreciate that nice gesture. But thank you. And again, Jon and David, you're helping me fulfill my dreams here too, because I really want this company to make a big impact on the world. And without your help, I don't think we could have as big of an impact. So I appreciate it.
We're getting, that's very kind, Bill. We're getting a question about, is ERP built in here, and does this work with SAP? I'm not, is it too early for that yet?
I think we don't do that yet, but I think that's somewhere we could go. But again, I would direct it to Yoav and Ofer about the timetable for that. But over time, this should really help automate the entire manufacturing process for a small to medium sized business. And everything that we could add in, this can be a platform for getting the whole product to market faster and streamlining every aspect of it. So that's a really great question.
Yeah, I think there's lots of potential to create all kinds of integrations here that will make the whole world flow much more smoothly and make things easier for everyone.
There's a question about this smallness and whether this is a disadvantage or an advantage. I mean, one of our listeners is saying run sizes are so small, so customers might have small revenue. What's the plan for scaling up revenue?
Yeah, well, definitely customers will, when they first start with us, might be small. Our goal is to make them so successful because they can iterate faster to meet their customer demand and get product market fit, that they will scale to tens of thousands of units with us. At some point, when you're making 1 million, this might not be the ideal way to go, but we want to be the sort of from 100 to 1,000 to 10,000 to 50,000. And then maybe at that point, someone would hand off to a different manufacturing method once the product is fully stabilized. It could be, though, that always making improvements, almost like fast fashion, making your product better and better over time, is something that is a continuous force for us, even as someone goes into the millions, because they make 1 million with 20, 50,000 runs that are all improved as opposed to 1 million product run. I think that will win in the end if someone does that.
Well, I mean, by the way, there's been reporting recently in the press about auto manufacturers who are, I think it was Toyota in particular, were looking at building much smaller factories to do exactly that, to sort of, and it seems as though the small is beautiful area is really, but the other point of this is that I remember, Bill, you said that there are over 30,000 target customers in the US alone.
Yeah, there's a lot, well, 30,000 target customers.
Small individually, but as an aggregate, I mean, that's more like Amazon, right? I mean,
well, it's also 30,000 customers sort of that we know of now. This is going to open up new customers because we now give people who didn't have this opportunity a chance. So hopefully it'll be 300,000 by the time everybody hears about this. But yes, there's 30,000 great targets immediately.
Yeah.
Another question that's being asked is about your go-to-market and whether or not this kind of technology will have a more appropriate fit for certain sectors. I mean, is this going to be good for defense contractors? Is it going to be good for the auto industry? Is it going to be good for, consumer electronics, or is it all of the above?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think we will find some sweet spots where the fact that our speed and our flexibility matters more. So maybe if you're making pencils where there's not much hardware, software insight in the product, that us making pencils won't be that valuable because there isn't the ability to adapt to the customer very much with each new iteration. I use that as an extreme example. We're not going to be making pencils, but some other product, not quite with the challenge of a smartphone, but something maybe in between, maybe a Nest thermostat like product, maybe something where you really want to try and understand how the consumer uses it. And your understanding of that by putting 100 products and then 1,000 products in the market allows you to make a superior product faster. So places where the iteration is the value, I think I can't tell you what industries that will be, but I think that's the attribute of the places where we'll have a lot of sweet spots.
Great. David?
Yeah, I mean, just to comment on that briefly, I think one of the things that came out clearly when we were looking at the company is that the early engagement is actually with a wide variety of different types of companies. But that said, I think our anticipation is the initial sweet spot will be with Internet of Things type companies that are creating connected devices. There, the software component is critically important, and the need to iterate is huge. And there are many small manufacturers doing a lot of innovative things. So
there's a question coming in, a good one, saying, could this software be used on a line that has a lot of different machines, such as press feeders and robots, or does it simply work with a single pick and place machine?
I believe that our sweet spot will eventually be what you just said, a line with a lot of machines. In fact, a line where a lot of different operations have to happen, where there's complexity, because a little bit, this is a little bit of exaggeration, but you know how people often say with 3D printing, complexity comes for free because it doesn't matter if you make a more complicated part because the print head moving around doesn't care if it moves in a weird way or it makes a rectangle. That's a little bit similar here. We can handle more complexity than a normal simple assembly line can. So I think having a robot in the center of a range of machines that do a lot of different operations, and then we integrate that all together, almost doesn't cost us any more. And therefore, I think complexity will be our friend, because we sort of, we eat complexity for lunch. Like complexity is something that the AI will be able to handle. So I think that will be a great opportunity for us.
We were asked about earlier whether or not you have the ability of grasping materials in different kinds of materials, meaning that is it the machine flexible enough?
Yes, yes. So what our plan is, we will be adding more and more operations to our line. And after we add the suction cup gripper and then the finger gripper and then this, it opens up new opportunities. So there'll be some products that we can't make at the beginning. But as we add each new type of operation, it opens up our window of possibility greatly.
So
and
you have what they call flexible adaptive work holding, which is a new term for me. Okay.
Yes, yes.
The other question we've got, again, relates to customer IP. Somebody missed our earlier discussion about that. I mean, but just to repeat what I heard earlier from you, Bill, is that the company is very focused on making sure that, especially at this critical stage of ideation, that each customer's IP, while we will learn from the aggregate of assembly, we're not in any way violating that.
No, all the IP will be kept separate, and I think you came up with our marketing term for that. It's HIPAA for your IP in your manufacturing. So we definitely should use that in our brochures from now on. I like that.
Manufacturing.
Yeah, I mean the IP protection here is pretty similar to any SaaS system like Salesforce, where you segregate each customer's data in a secure way, and only they can access it.
So another question about your go-to-market. Are you going to work with distributors? I mean, in other words, let's say that there's some listener here who lives in a different country in the world, and they would like to open up, a service bureau for Launchpad.
Yeah.
Are you going to work that way, or is it?
I think so. I think so. We haven't set that up yet, but I think that's a great way to scale, because this, a little bit like you said, this should be distributed all over the world. This should not be in one city. That defeats the whole purpose of sending everything to one place to make it. So I think working with other partners and distributors around the world would be a great path. Right now, we're just keeping up with the demand from these first customers, so we're set. But I think that's a great direction for the company.
Yeah. The way I think about it long term, it almost becomes like the operating system for this kind of distributed manufacturing. And I think in the medium to long term, we'll see other manufacturers adopt it. And even just the catalog of parts that's being built alone, I think is going to be a hugely valuable asset that doesn't really exist today.
Yeah. I got a vision earlier when you were talking about this, John, when you were comparing hardware to software. And obviously the rise of software was so great. I'm thinking of the classic comparison of bits versus atoms, where the bits go around in packets and they move around and you can move them all over the earth. I started imagining, just when you were describing it earlier, that imagine all of our parts moving around a little bit, not quite like packets, but we're trying to almost turn the movement of atoms in the world into a flow path like we did for digital. It's not quite like that because you can't stick them in a copper wire, but moving around on the factory floor, moving around on the table, imagine we're taking the same concepts that we use to move the bits around so well, to moving the atoms around, to get them arranged the way we want in the product we want. So I think it's an exciting direction. It's maybe a way of visualizing what we're bringing to manufacturing. And I'm really passionate about
this. This is very, very infectious. And I have a feeling we're going to be doing this a lot. Just because
good.
It's getting me excited. I think it's exciting our audience. There's a question coming in about medical products and whether or not, one of the areas you'll focus on is medical supply and medical devices. Are there special issues or problems that need to be dealt with in that realm?
Yeah, I can't speak to the actual sort of approval and FDA and other issues related to that. That would be on behalf of the company who's making the product. I do think, though, that's a great market, because that's exactly where you need to make 1,000 units.
And that's exactly where you need the iteration, iteration over and over and over again.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think that could be a great opportunity for us. Again, I don't think we're going to be hungering for opportunities. I think right now we just want to get scaled, learn as fast as we can from early customers, and then, like you said, distribute this all over the world.
You know that we're in 2021 because someone's asking a question about whether or not you could consider putting people's IP and data on the blockchain. And
Well, okay. So I think that's a really interesting idea. One dream I have of this, in the same way that an entrepreneur could go to an internet cafe in Tel Aviv or in Delhi, and their intellectual property and their idea could benefit the planet and earn them an income. Imagine that you can take your concept for a product and put it on the blockchain or put it in a place where you can protect the IP, and it can get made for people around the world, but you didn't even have to go make it. They just paid to make it.
I think that's a separate company, Bill, and we're going to have a conversation. Okay, we're going to be in touch, Faye. That was really.
But I think this idea that we can unlock the potential for new product ideas, because you don't have to be an expert to manufacture it. You just have to come up with the idea for the product. That's a new frontier.
Okay. We are nearing the end of the webinar, but I want to give David a chance just to restate the deal terms so that people know, because ultimately there's a phrase in the Jewish tradition that says "Ein kemach, ein Torah," which means if there's no dough, literally, there's no learning. So we've got to remember that we're bringing investment into this company. And David, you want to review the terms, please?
Yeah, so the terms are pretty straightforward. This is a Series A investment. The pre-money valuation is $9.5 million. OurCrowd is leading with a $2.5 million investment. We'll be joined by some other investors as well, in addition to Bill, and it's currently funding now on the platform.
Great. And we hope to see many of you. Any questions that you would like to submit afterwards, you can by all means contact Bill through OurCrowd. We'll send him these questions. We'll try to get back to you. We're getting a question about valuation, and that Proto Labs is supposedly valued at under 6x revenue, which sounds to my ear fairly cheap. And you're asking, is that an appropriate comp for Launchpad? I mean, personally, no. I'm curious as to your thoughts on that.
Well, we love Proto Labs. Proto Labs is a great company. I think they're worth several $billion. They are lower margin because they're more in the making of the metal. They're taking the metal and machining it, so it's a little bit tighter margin. Also, we plan to be hopefully much higher growth. So we think our growth rate will be through the roof, which will value us much higher. I can't speak to the exact multiples we'll have in the future, but look, they built a multi-billion-dollar company. Our hope is to build a multi-billion-dollar company. We want to charge ahead and try and make as much impact as we can.
That's a great answer. We're getting another, sort of blast from the past. Someone who sat with you in Pasadena in 1997. Okay, Ari Fertzler, who said, I remember discussing the Idealab New York concept, and you taught me paradigm shift versus incremental change. Very nice.
Well, yeah, that's a restatement, a very good restatement of what I said earlier. Challenge the status quo. Like if you can come up with a paradigm shift for something, well, it's easy to come up with something which is orthogonal to what people are doing, but it also has to be right. You can't just challenge the consensus and be wrong. You have to challenge the consensus and be right. We feel that we've come up with a way to challenge the way everything's going in manufacturing, but it's actually the right way to go for the future. And we're very excited to share this with you. Thank you so much.
We're so delighted to do this. I want to thank David for putting it together, my wonderful events team, and Bill Gross, the one and only, and Idealab. We're excited about Launchpad. Go to the OurCrowd site, make your commitments, please. We look forward to joining you in this investment, and we'll see you at the next webinar, and hopefully with Bill Gross and lessons. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.